Hi everybody, I'm Gwendolyn Sterk here today with Mary Beth Walter, who's a school advocate and has worked in the special education industry and mental health industry for many, many years, correct?
Yes.
And I've known Mary Beth for a long time, and I have to tell you, a lot of people are having difficulty or first understanding when they get the call that there might be a situation involving their child, and they learn these terms called IEP, and then somebody else says something about a 504. And you know what? It's a blank stare.
I totally understand, because when it was first introduced to the professionals, we got a blank stare as well.
Okay.
IEP is the student is experiencing a difficulty, whether physical, mental, or emotional, that requires more support than a general student, general student in the classroom. They have rights. They have people that are evaluate them. 504 that one can be very fluid, or it can be a little more permanent. The person is an average student, the student is doing fine, but let's say all of a sudden there's some ADD.
Okay.
They haven't had it before. 504 is more, I'd say, not medical in that you have a problem, but we notice some signs and they need some help pushing through. What it does do is it says to the school district, yes, they are not within the IEP system, the special education system, but we need to manage them a little more hands-on in order for them to be successful.
So a little bit more of an accommodation, but not all the way to be in the special education program.
One would be the person has done well. I remember having a student who was going progressively blind. So in the beginning grades, it was fine. Towards the middle, then she kind of wasn't to that point yet, but she needed a larger computer screen.
Sure.
It was easier for her if someone else took notes. So those can all be accommodations. They can be IEP or 504.
And they're generally going to be in the mainstream classroom. And it's just an accommodation. So would another example of a 504 accommodation may be longer to take a test?
Longer to take a test. The other one is more time on assignments.
Got it.
More checking usually it's called case manager, checking by the case manager so that the student's getting the proper feedback that you wouldn't normally get.
Got it. So now, is a child tested in order to qualify for a 504?
They're evaluated. Some of it's testing, but most of it's an evaluation because there's a presenting kind of hiccup, I want to call it.
Got it. And is the 504 plan then reviewed on an annual basis?
Yes.
And would the same be true of an individual education plan?
Actually, 504 is much, I don't want to say informal, but it's not to the depth. IEPs, by law, individual education plans must be reviewed annually.
Okay.
You must be tested and found its re-eligibility every 3 years.
Okay.
And the parent must receive progress on a yearly basis and quarterly, and so all that is in place.
Now, is a parent looking at a 504 plan?
Mm-hmm.
Should that parent be looking at an advocate, or is it not really the same level of necessity as an IEP?
It depends on the parent, the student, the situation.
Okay.
Because a comfortable parent, or a parent who's comfortable with the student's services, a student who's comfortable with their services is much more successful than someone who just goes, I don't know what I got myself into. So I think an advocate can also do that, can explain it, can look at it, suggest adjustments, can be with the person if there's a meeting for the 504. So I think it's also a matter of if the person receiving the services and their parent are comfortable, it's much more effective.
Now, is the 504 plan a federal right that students have?
It's a federal law. The impact for school districts is special education has a higher reimbursement rate because of the services. 504, no.
Okay. And so would a school more tend to want to have an IEP versus a 504 plan?
Probably the other way around.
Okay, because of the level of accommodation. Understood. And now, if someone is getting an IEP, the Individualized Education Plan, does that require, you've talked about testing and a 3-year testing. So is that something you have to get your own testing for? I mean, you have a parent out here who's not understanding, the school is calling them saying, I think there's a difficulty. Who's going to do this testing?
The school is responsible for the testing, and any testing that's suggested at the IEP by the school district, they're responsible for. School districts generally have the school nurse, the psychologist, the social worker, the special education teacher, the general ed teacher. Especially with determination on special ed, psychologist, social worker, those are all mandated.
Now, let's say that a parent gets an IEP and they think that the difficulty the child having is much more significant. For example, there is an actual diagnosis of autism. Should that parent go out, and can a parent go out and get their own evaluation done by their own doctor?
Yes, they can. There is nothing to preclude that, and you can also bring that in as your information into the IEP meeting.
Okay, and that becomes a way, as also working with the advocate, to be able to say, my child needs more accommodations because I've had the child tested. Would that be a fair statement?
It would.
And do you recommend that people, in addition to getting testing at the school, look at those alternatives to make sure that everything is moving forward for the child in the best way it can?
Yes, I do.
Very
I
good.
also think that if the more you look at it, the more comfortable you're with it. The other thing is, what an advocate does is it allows a third party to say, okay, is this what you would like to see in terms of increased or decreased accommodations? It takes that emotion out and actually presents the school district with a plan that is observable, measurable, and concrete.
Very good. Well, if you're out there today and you're wondering what these terms mean, I think we've got some good answers here and a way for you to start this process. Boy, it's a lot of work and a lot of foreign language, right?
It is. It is.
But it's something that you can do. So consider an advocate and move forward in the best way you can for your child. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Gwen.